All right, before I get started in John 11, other than Keith, because I told him this last night, how many Marys are in the New Testament? Bella says 4. Miss Eileen says 3.
Mary Magdalene, Mary and Martha, Mary the mother.
Mary and Martha.
I'm not sure, I don't know Mary.
Name them, Judah. Who are they?
Can't remember.
Bella?
Mary.
Mary,
There's
which Mary?
Lazarus' sister.
Mary.
There's Mary, the mother of Jesus.
Mary. Mary Magdalene.
And
I'd say 3.
I said 4.
What's that one?
I will say this, none of those are right. 4 is not right, 3 is not right. It's more. 5 is not right.
Are you serious?
6.
Name it.
Mary, the mother of Jesus. Mary, the mother of the Apostle James and the wife of Clopas. That's in Mark 15:40. Mary of Bethany, the sister of Martha and Lazarus. Luke. Mary Magdalene, Luke 8:2. Mary, the mother of Mark, the sister of Barnabas. Remember John Mark, his mother. Acts 12:12. And Mary was just a Christian woman in Rome named Mary in Romans 16:6. Just a little trivia thing. I almost wrote y'all last night to tell y'all, figure out how many, but I knew all y'all go to Google and have it in no time instead of looking it up. So it wasn't taking 30 seconds to have it figured out, so to figure the point. So,
I Google.
you don't Google?
I said, oh, I Google.
Oh.
Everyone Googles.
Used to, it had to be old school research, you know, go get your concordance out or something, go look it up. But
Go through high school that way.
six different Marys in the New Testament.
Just drag your strongs out.
Let me ask you this: is Mary Magdalene the same as Mary, the sister of Lazarus?
I say yes.
Why do you say yes?
Because of the accounts in the 2 different accounts. One leads you to believe she's Mary Magdalene, that she was the Mary. I have reasons I can't disclose.
it is.
All right, let me ask you this: does
I think
anybody
that
else?
it's the same.
Does anybody else think Mary Magdalene is the same as
It has to
Mary, the sister of Lazarus and Martha?
be the way things cross in here.
Anybody?
No.
Bella's going to agree with her grandmother.
Yeah.
All right, Justin. Gracie.
I don't know.
I don't either.
I don't remember. Well, it's just the way they circle the cross in here that makes me think that.
John 11.
John 11.
Verse 1. Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary, and her sister Martha. It was the Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick.
So that is her.
It's not Mary Magdalene.
Well, I thought she did do that. Explain.
I will. All right, verse 2, what did it say? Right now, Justin, it's playing right now. All right. Did you start at Judah? Okay. Verse 2, who is the Mary that washed the feet of Jesus? According to this, who? Lazarus' sister.
Right.
Okay? Lazarus' sister is very clearly written right here. It does not say Mary Magdalene, does it?
Right. No.
Every time Mary Magdalene's name is mentioned, it's always Mary Magdalene.
Right.
Every time this Mary's name is mentioned, it's Mary, the sister of Lazarus or Martha.
This will cause the research.
This will cause you to research?
Because I've
Then I
crossed
will
them
ask
too many
you
times.
to do that, because every Bible scholar that I could read on this subject, none of them agrees that it's the same Mary. Every one of them says it's 2 different Marys.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the reasoning is every time Mary Magdalene's name is written even like at the cross, after the cross, at the resurrection.
Yes.
Who was at the resurrection when Jesus said, "It is I"? Who's he talking to?
It's Mary
It doesn't just say
Magdalene,
Mary,
yes.
does it? Who does it name? Mary Magdalene. It doesn't say Mary Magdalene, the sister of Martha and Lazarus. Every time this Mary's name is mentioned, it's mentioned as Mary, the sister of Lazarus.
There's a spark in you that thinks it might be.
No, it doesn't.
Doesn't?
It used to be, because I was led to believe my whole life that it was the same Mary.
Really?
If you had asked me yesterday this time, I would have told you it was more likely the same Mary. Not yesterday this time. Based off what I
Because of the
read,
Mary Magdalene.
based off of what, the way that the scriptures are written, I personally don't think it's the same Mary. Ma'am?
It doesn't sound like it.
But now let's read. Verse 2 was, the Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. The sister sent word to him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. But when Jesus heard this, he said, the sickness is not to the end of death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified by it. And we all know the rest of the story there, as Paul Harvey would say. Jesus later comes, 3 or 4 days later, here, he stalled and let Lazarus die. He shows up. For what purpose was this? So that God could be glorified. Tells him to move the stone away. What happened? He speaks. Lazarus come forward. But let's look at one more verse here, verse 32. Therefore, when Mary came where Jesus was, she saw him and fell at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Yeah. Mary, the sister of Lazarus, the sister of Martha. What kind of ties did she have to Jesus? Let me say it this way. If your brother had died, and he's already a friend of Jesus, it's pretty clear in the story that Lazarus and Jesus, and Lazarus and Mary and Martha were friends before this whole story took place. I mean, we just read there the first part of that chapter, John 11, in the first few verses there. The sister sent, verse 3, sent word to him saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. Is that how your Bible reads? He whom you love? In order to love somebody like this, like it's written here, you have had to spend time with them. There's got to be a background. There's got to be history.
Yeah.
Would you
Verse
agree
5.
with this?
Yeah. Verse 5.
Verse 5 says what?
Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus.
Who did Jesus love? Martha, Mary, Lazarus.
And Lazarus.
Is there history here? There has to be. In order for it to be in the Bible that Lazarus loved Jesus, and then in 2 verses later, Jesus loved Martha, Jesus loved the sister Mary, Jesus loved the brother Lazarus. Jesus shows up, and what does Mary say? Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. Yo, what you got, Mama?
I was just thinking, he waited 2 days, and then when he went, and then when he called him forth, I was going through, the sister said, by this time he stinks. It seems like it's not the time limit right there. He waited 2 days, and he'd been buried, and she said he's
in the ground for 4 days total.
that's what I'm talking about. But when he heard that he was sick, he just waited 2 days before he went, and then that's what she said,
I'm not following you.
that he had been dead 4 days.
Yeah, but he may have heard after he was already.
Verse 17.
Verse 17? Verse 17 said, Jesus came and found that he had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Back then, they didn't have communication like we have.
It only has
Just saying, what if he's already dead by the time Jesus found out about it?
So in verse 3 he said
I
that.
mean, but the term sick is what I was,
Yeah, he said that.
Yeah,
he's
but he
sick.
also says of the little girl that she wasn't dead, and she was dead, but she's asleep.
It says he's up only 2 miles away.
Jesus' terminology in their terminology, were not always on the same. That's like the verse, I just listened to it this week, or actually read it, where he was asked by his brothers if he was going to Jerusalem for the Passover. He says, no, I'm not going. They all leave, and he goes. He beat them there.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, we would call that a lie. Again, Jesus can do, I don't understand it. I'm just going with him.
He had a reason for not wanting to go when they went.
And he did, because they was going to try to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
He had to sneak in. I mean, I know why
Right.
he didn't go with him, because he snuck in. But, anyway. So, Lazarus is dead. Is Jesus their friend? To the point where he, nowhere else in the Bible are you going to find where he did what, except in this verse or this story. Jesus wept. You'll find where he's moved with compassion. You'll find a whole lot of his emotions. But there were tears that came out of his eyes at this point. Jesus was moved. Lazarus was dead. He's sick. There's a love here. I'm trying to show you there's history here. Right? We don't know. There's so much that Jesus did that we don't have a clue about. But I'm telling you, there's history here with Mary and Martha and Lazarus. They had a connection. They had time together. They had meals together. All right? Now, let's move on to John chapter 12. Next chapter over. John chapter 12, verse 1. Jesus, 6 days before the Passover, came to Bethany where Lazarus was. All right, where are we back? We're back in Bethany where? Where he had raised Lazarus from the dead, right? Whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Verse 2. So they made him a supper there, and Martha was serving. But Lazarus was one of those reclining at the table with him. Verse 3. Mary then took a pound of very costly perfume of pure nard and anointed the feet of Jesus, wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples who was intending to betray him, said, why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor people? Now he said this not because he was concerned about the poor, but because he was a thief, and as he had the money box, and he used to pilfer what was put into it. Therefore Jesus said, let her alone, so that she may keep it for the day of my burial. For you always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. Read verse 7 to me in the King James, or New King James, please, somebody. Verse 7. I know there's several of them in here.
But Jesus said, let her alone. She has kept this for the day of my burial.
She's preparing him for burial, right? It's more of a ceremonial thing here. Who's washing the feet of Jesus? Mary, right? Does she love Jesus?
Yes.
We've already shown, just a chapter over, there is quite a history here. There's love. There's something being done that we don't even, I don't think, get the full ramifications of what's going on here. It doesn't say she's doing it to fulfill prophecy or scripture. She is preparing him for his death. She is washing the feet. Remember, just a few days later, so to speak, we're in the upper room. What does Jesus do to the disciples? He takes out off his outer cloak, puts on a towel, takes water, and does what? What we did a few months ago up in here, right? Washed the feet of the disciples. But yet, who washed his feet? It wasn't the disciples. It wasn't the great men of God. It wasn't those that he sent out that did all the miracles. Talking about the 70, talking about the 12, talking about everything that they had seen and done and performed. It wasn't those great names, so to speak, those that conquered the world with the gospel. It was the sister of Lazarus. Grateful for what all we don't know, but we know for sure Lazarus. Keep the story real quick. Now let's flip over to
Wait, before
Luke
you
chapter
flip,
10.
let me ask a question.
What? Come on, Mary Magdalene, what you got?
Okay, is this at the house of Lazarus, since Martha's doing the cooking?
Let's look at Luke chapter
I
10.
know Luke's a different.
Look at Luke
That says
chapter
Simon.
10. Let's look at Luke
No, this
chapter
is the same.
10.
Yeah, I got a question now. See if you answer it.
Luke chapter 10, verse 38. Whose home is this in verse 38?
Martha's home.
Martha welcomed him into her house.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I gotta find
Go ahead and find it.
it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Luke chapter 10, verse 38. Now, as they were traveling along, he entered into a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Okay, let's establish whose house are we in? Martha.
Lazarus. Okay.
Whose house are we in? Martha's.
Mary, Martha, and Lazarus.
Peter, Paul, and Mary, right?
Yes, yes.
Whose house are we in? Very specifically written right here. Martha's house. Okay.
Well, I would think that in John 12 too, that it was Martha's house, because Martha,
Didn't say we
Was
were in
certain.
Bethany. It just says we're in a village. It doesn't name where we are. It's not specific here. But now, let's establish whose house are we in? Martha. All right, ladies. When you're in your house and you have guests show up in your house, who is now responsible for making sure everything gets done?
Tim.
Very good.
Justin is.
Very good. Typically,
Me,
who does it ultimately in our minds fall on? The lady of the house, right? It doesn't say that she has a husband here. I don't know if she's widowed. I don't have a clue what happened. But it says Martha's house, okay? I don't have a clue. All I know is what's written. Okay? When other ladies show up at your house to help, they help, but in the end, who feels the most responsibility most of the time? The lady of the house. So if it's at Miss Eileen's house, in her mind, ultimately it's on her, even though all of us show up, and let's say the ladies are in there helping, we're doing potatoes, we're doing carrots, we're doing everything. Who's going to be the head hen of the whole thing, trying to make sure everything gets done right? She may be sending somebody to make sure they got something to drink, go make sure this, go make sure that. Now you move to Lillian's house, who's going to feel the most responsibility? Even though you now show up at her house, in our minds, we take a different role, don't we? If it's in your house, we feel the most, we got to get everything done. And these other ladies that show up, now, Mom, if they show up, all them ladies that are there, for whatever reason, we're here, who's supposed to be in there helping the head hen of the house? And what happens if one of them goes sit down on the couch and wasn't helping the whole time? All them eyebrows go up.
You pick a book.
yeah.
Especially if it's somebody new that we don't know and they don't jump in there to help wash dishes or do whatever. Ain't nothing said, but them eyebrows go up. I've seen it too.
You know, there are some ladies at the house that won't take it. Get out of my kitchen.
I understand that, but when you got enough there and you gotta have help. Yeah, but I have seen that too. But there's a whole lot of people in this story.
Get out.
There's a lot of people in the house right here, okay? But let's establish something. It's Martha's house, and she feels responsible. She had a sister called Mary Magdalene. Is that what it says? No, it says Mary.
Mary.
So who are we talking about? Mary, the sister of Martha and Lazarus, who was seated at the Lord's feet, listening to His
Word.
Word. Obviously, Jesus is teaching here. They've been there for a little while. He is now teaching. Okay? As the lady of the house, again, whose responsibility is it? In our mind, whose responsibility?
Martha.
And sister over here needs to be helping me. So she comes, verse 40, Martha was distracted. What does the King James say there? Martha was what?
Distracted with much serving.
With all her preparations for her serving. And she came up to Jesus and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the serving alone? Tell her to help me. Jesus? Where's Mary at this point in the story?
And
Jesus' feet.
All right, where's she at again?
His feet.
In the other story, where was she at?
Washing his feet.
washing his feet with her hair, with the perfume.
Okay, what I want to talk about tonight is how do we get from being in love with Jesus to the point where we take something that's a year's wages, because that's what it was worth, the perfume box, and you break it open and you pour it upon the feet of Jesus to the point where you wash His feet with your own hair. How do you get from, I love Jesus, to the point where she is so poured out over Him that she takes the most precious thing that she has? And it says the perfume, the odor filled the whole house. It was a very costly nard perfume. A year's wages. Now that may vary in this room, but what's the average in America? Average middle class family, what are they going to make? 35, 40? Is that right?
I'd say around 40.
40? 40 to 50? Let's take the middle road, 45. How many of us are willing to spend $45,000 on a bottle of perfume?
Love is action.
Would you be willing to spend $45,000 on a bottle of perfume?
Not me. I think that was too vain.
I'd give you 45, but not buy
You would spend $45,000 on a bottle of perfume?
If I had a date.
If you had a hot date, you'd spend $45,000. I'm with you, Justin. I'm with you, Bubba. I'm with you, dude.
Do you have 45?
I didn't ask. If you had, I said, would you spend it?
He didn't let you know that.
Then, would you take that, that's worth a whole year of your job, break it open, and pour it on the feet of somebody? Just because
Probably not.
you loved them so much, and then
He had saved her.
from what?
She had already had an experience with him.
From what? See,
I don't
here's
know.
where Mary Magdalene comes into the story.
Luke 7.
What does it say?
Read it
Read
to
it to me.
Oh, let's do it.
And behold, one of the Pharisees asked Jesus.
That's a different story.
That's what I'm
Read it to
asking.
me.
That's what I'm
Luke chapter 7. Where we at?
7:37.
All right, come on,
36. One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to dine with him, and he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. And one of the things says Simon, and behold, a woman of the town who was an especially wicked sinner, when she learned that he was reclining at the table in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of ointment, perfume, and standing behind him at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears, and she wiped them with the hair of her head and kissed his feet affectionately and anointed them with the ointment, perfume. Okay. And you want to keep going? Now, when the Pharisee who had invited him saw it, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would surely know who and what sort of woman this is that was touching him.
All right, what book are you in?
Luke 7.
What chapter?
7.
What chapter are we in?
10.
Two different stories.
Is it really?
Well, yeah, they're at the Pharisee's
They're
house.
at the
and
Pharisee's
I understand
house.
that.
Pharisee's
Yeah,
house.
Martha's
That's,
house.
we're in Martha's
that's
house.
Simon, that's why it's going to go.
But she's not named.
But
We're in a
she's
different
breaking the
village,
same
too.
flask.
No,
She's
it's a
breaking-
different woman.
It's
Completely different story.
This is the story of the alabaster box.
Right.
Alabaster's never mentioned
No,
in the
it's
story of
nard.
Mary.
This
doing
is
nard
where
over here.
it is. But
Two
this is where I
completely-
have crossed them.
All right, but
Okay.
she's never mentioned.
Okay.
the
I'm
name.
good. I'm just
This is where we get Mary Magdalene
That's
from.
where I was confused, because
Yes,
I was
that's
thinking this was the same
Nope.
wicked woman who
Not the
washed
same.
his feet.
Okay.
This is my point.
Good.
We've heard our whole lives that Mary poured it out because she was saved from so much, because she was Mary Magdalene. Because we take that other story, who's 2 chapters, 3 chapters before, and we try to make it the same story, and it's in 2 different towns.
This doesn't make her out to be wicked at all.
Because this one's not.
She's
The
just
first
Mary.
one was.
She's just Mary.
Is
And
that
Luke-
Mary Magdalene, that one?
She's never named.
Never know.
She's never named. But what we've done is we've taken the other story that names Mary, and we twisted them because we never realized
Because
there's
they
2
talk about
different
anointing oil on the
stories.
It's 2 different women that
2
washed
different
his
women,
feet.
2 different stories,
2 different
and we
ones.
know this because it's in the same book.
Well, they talk
Yeah.
about how wicked she is there.
That's that one.
That's
Yeah.
Mary Magdalene.
It doesn't name her. She's not named.
No, she is
It
not.
says a wicked woman.
Uh-huh.
There was a lot that Jesus did for people. It could
That's
have been
right.
somebody completely different
Right.
than Mary Magdalene. Her name could have been Aubrey. Who knows what her name is? I'm just pulling a name out of the
Yeah.
air.
If you
That's
really
right.
want to muddy the water, is it the same as the story in Matthew 26? Where he's in Bethany again.
Yes.
He's at the home of Simon the leper,
Uh-huh.
and a woman brings
There's
an
the
alabaster
Simon.
box. And
See? Yes.
See, that's confusing in my mind. I just associated all of that with one.
It's not. It's
It's not.
2,
It's
if
2.
not 3.
So
There's the confusion. It's 2, if not 3. But here again, let every word be performed by 2 or 3 witnesses.
well, in,
They're preparing him for something.
in the one in Matthew 26, you have the same statement that's made in John 12 of this could have been sold and given to the poor. So that adds to the
So,
confusion.
It could be the same story as Mary here, because this one is in Bethany,
It is in Bethany.
but it's in the house of Simon the leper.
yeah.
But the other one says it's Martha's house.
Yes.
it's 2
Was she
different
married?
writers.
Was she married to Simon the leper? I don't know. I'm just saying, there's at least 2 stories here, if not 3.
Yes.
I don't want to confuse anybody. I want to be a little more clear
Well,
when
no,
we leave here
because
tonight.
in Matthew 26, she poured it on his head.
She just got carried away.
2 different writers. They might word
Yeah.
it
She may
different.
have poured it here and poured it. I don't
That's
know.
right.
I'm just saying for sure there's 2, if not 3. Let's get back to point here. What we've done is we've taken the 2 stories for sure and we've twisted it. And again, if they were in different books, if Matthew was talking about the wicked woman, we might could say it's the same story, but it's not. It's both in the same book. Luke chapter 10,
7,
chapter 7, and then in Luke chapter
10,
10, 3 chapters away, we have a similar story, but in chapter 7, she's a wicked woman of the town that Jesus had set free. She comes in and with her tears, but we don't see tears in chapter 10, do we? Did we read
No, we
tears
haven't.
in Mary's account? Look, let's read it real quick.
What? Which one now?
Matthew and Luke chapter 10.
Luke
Luke 10.
38.
38.
No,
Well, Lazarus is already alive there, right?
no, this is a different story. In John 12 is where she pours the ointment. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I'm saying we're back to Luke 10 where she's at his feet. Okay? So I'm wrong here. I got confused. Let me just say this. It's in 2 different books, but it's 2 different accounts, 2 different cities. In Luke chapter 7, what city is she in?
Luke 10. Or
Luke chapter 7, what city is she
It
in?
didn't say. It didn't say.
in a Pharisee
The Pharisee's
Just
house.
says the Pharisee's house.
Okay.
And what verse was
And
that?
in Luke chapter 7, verse 36.
36, 30,
And now we're in John
10.
12.
John 12.
John 12 is where Mary comes
Yes. We better get back to
in Bethany. So the story in John 12 and the story in Matthew 26 or whatever it is very well may be the same woman. Because they're both in Bethany. It probably is the same story. No? Not the same story, Keith? Okay. I don't have a clue. I wasn't there.
Are you gonna talk
Where?
about 41 and 42?
Of which
Luke
one?
10?
Luke 10. What, Mama? See, I knew this was gonna stir it up, but I'm going,
I
I'm
don't
coming.
understand
42,
Luke 10,
the good portion thing.
Luke 10, I'm coming. 41,
And Jesus said you're going to harm them.
yes, we're gonna get there. We're coming. But let's go ahead and go. Okay. Mary is a different story than the sinful woman. It's not named in the Pharisee's house. Because when she did it in John 12, she's in Bethany. Right? Okay. You're still not sold on it, even though you read it there. Because our whole life, we've been taught Mary Magdalene came, and it doesn't name that woman. It names the other Mary in the other story, and we've taken it. Here Mary, here the sinful woman, and that's Mary Magdalene. It's two different stories. That's all I'm saying. What now, Mom?
I was thinking that these four apostles, these four writers
Yes.
that are
They
telling
said
this
things
story,
Yes.
one is telling it in his version, the other one's telling it in his
Yeah.
version. I mean, it can be confusing.
You don't mean to really mess you up?
No.
Not really.
Yeah, go ahead. I want to hear it.
Let's talk about it, then, Mom. Who wrote Matthew? Who wrote Mark? You just called them all four apostles. Because again, this is what we've been taught our whole life. Who is Mark? Is Mark one of the 12?
the four Gospels.
Is Mark one of the 12
I don't
disciples,
think so.
apostles?
No.
No.
But we all say all four of the Gospels were written by the apostles. They were not. Mark was not. Luke.
Luke was not.
Is Luke one of the apostles?
No.
Who was Luke?
He
It
was
was
a
Dr.
physician.
Luke, the
He was
physician.
doctor.
John. Yes, John was one of the
John
apostles.
was.
You've got two accounts that were apostles, two that were not.
Matthew was an apostle.
Matthew and John.
Yes.
So who
But
wrote
Mark
Mark?
is John Mark.
Mark wrote it?
Mark. John Mark, who was Barnabas's nephew, that left Paul and Barnabas on their missionary journey.
That's the same fellow that wrote the Gospel of Mark.
That's what
How is
many
he?
people
I
believe.
didn't
How
realize
was he
that.
allowed to
I
write the
didn't
gospel
either.
if he wasn't?
All right. Brings up, I'm glad you asked the question. That's where I'm headed.
What
Why
was it?
would
What was it,
people,
baby?
How was he allowed to write the gospel if he wasn't one of the
if he wasn't there?
then?
If Luke wasn't there, how come he
You
wrote
don't,
it?
you don't
Well,
want
he's a doctor.
He's got his
He's got good
PhD.
education.
He's got his PhD. How does Luke start?
Don't forget to that.
I'm coming back. Bring me back to it if I don't. Luke 1, how does it start?
Inasmuch as many have undertaken to compile an account,
Whoa. Read that again.
You said
Verse
Oh,
it more
1.
a narrative.
inasmuch as many
Many.
have undertaken to
do what?
compile an account of the things accomplished among us, just as they were handed down to us by those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and servants of the word.
Okay.
It seemed fitting for me as well, having investigated everything carefully from the beginning, to write it out for you in consecutive order, most excellent Theophilus.
Why did he write the book? He wasn't even there.
He
So
felt
Compelled.
Compelled.
What is he doing? We just read it. He's compiling what was
What happened?
handed down
he's a modern day reporter.
Jewish
An ancient
culture.
man.
Jewish culture is an oratory culture. I don't know if I said that word right. Is that you? Did I say that right? Oratory.
Oral culture.
It's oral. Everything's recited. Everything's recited. Even Moses and stuff. Moses wrote Genesis, did he not? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers,
5 books of the
Deuteronomy.
Bible he
Were
wrote.
all written by Moses. Was Moses
Yes.
there when God created Adam and Eve?
No.
Was he there when Abel was murdered by Cain?
No.
Was,
Then everything was word by mouth.
was
word of
it?
mouth.
Was he there when Noah built the ark?
No.
A lot of what he wrote was handed down.
Right.
Too expensive.
It was handed down. It was handed down. It was handed down. It was handed down. Same way here.
Is it not true that in Jewish culture, the children, part of their schooling, they had
Yes.
to memorize
The first 5 books of the
Pentateuch?
Bible, by the time a boy was 12 years old, he would recite the first 5 books of the Bible.
Good grief.
And we can't get Psalms one
Ain't
chapter a
that
month
real?
now. Huh? 1 chapter a month, that's all we try to do. And I've heard more whining about that around my table. No. Yes, but
Don't stick. I read, and practice, and it just don't.
let's get back to our story here. Mary, did she love Jesus?
Yes.
All right, let's
Which
talk.
one are we talking about?
The sister of Lazarus, the sister of Martha. The other lady that we just read about, the wicked woman, did she love Jesus?
I do have a
Yes.
Did she love Jesus?
I believe she did.
She came and out of her heart, she poured out because of her gratitude. She took it and she poured it, wept over his feet because her life was restored by Jesus. He that has been forgiven much, loves much. What's your question?
Is this, when he's here at Martha and Mary's, is this the same trip that brought Lazarus back?
No.
It's different. He said, let's go back.
It's a different time. You talking about which time here?
Well, when he got the message about Lazarus, he said,
Okay.
let's go back.
Yes. I don't know at what point we're at.
I just find it odd that Luke, is recounting what happened and he didn't bother to mention the guy that got raised from the dead.
Yeah, it may be before. They may have actually just left and then go back. Lazarus dies. I don't know. I don't know this, but it's not really plainly chronological. Because realize a lot of times the chronological order of the story is out of order in the Gospels, or the Gospel, 4 accounts of the Gospel. The chronological of it, as far as he went here, did that, he went here, did that.
And Luke said he was trying to put it in consecutive order in his account.
Right. Yeah, that's what he says in chapter 1. He tried his best to put it in order. Okay? And if that's the case, where are we at, chapter 10?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we got to get to Miss Mary Beth's question here in 41. Nothing is said about Lazarus being raised from the dead at this part of the story yet. So yeah, I concur with you from that, because every other time that is mentioned after he's raised from the dead, it's the Lazarus and Jesus raised from the dead, who had a sister named Martha and a sister named Mary, not Magdalene.
It says that.
These 4 different authors of these
Yes.
first 4 Gospels
Yes, ma'am.
could be at a different setting, for each one of them could have heard a little differently. It's not worded verbatim.
Matthew presents the gospel as Jesus as the king. Mark presents the gospel as a servant. Luke, he's presented as God. No, king, servant, man. Man is Luke, John is God. King, servant, man, God. That's how the 4 different accounts are presented as he was a man. I mean, you could go back and look at the genealogy of it, which one said the genealogies, because not all of them have the genealogies of Jesus. And you can look at how they're presenting him as king. Matthew. Mark, servant. Luke, man. John, God. That's the angle they're coming from. If you'll read it with that in mind, you'll see it in there. King, servant, man, God.
But there are 2 different towns here, so you know that's 2 different, for sure, locations that we're talking.
Which part of the story is 2 different?
The Luke 7 was a different town from Bethany that you're talking
Yes.
about. Bethany's where we are.
Yes.
So
And
that's
it's
for
at
sure 2 different.
At Simon the leper's house.
Pharisee.
Too much for you, Miss Mary Beth?
A little bit.
Am I overloading you? Let's break it back down simple. Simply, it's 2 different stories at least. 2 different stories of women pouring something out on Jesus. Okay, one of them was by a woman that is not named. It was just a woman that was a wicked woman that Jesus had come and rescued and saved, and she, out of gratitude, came and poured it, wept over him, washed his feet with her hair. The second account is the sister of Lazarus, who came and poured the alabaster box, the nard, over the feet of Jesus to prepare him for burial. The first time it doesn't say, you didn't read anything about being prepared for burial, did you? In Luke 7. It was just out of her gratitude, she wept over his feet. But again, there's been so much confusion over this that both stories have been combined into one story. But it's two different accounts.
How far away is he from burial when she does that? And it seems a little,
It's not too far.
Are we in Luke
Yeah.
10?
when you,
John 12 is where it mentions.
well,
The
with
feet.
the
Very
John.
Yes. It's not, honestly don't remember, but it's not very far.
It was 6 days before the
Is-
Passover.
Yeah.
Does
Okay,
she
a
know
week,
it's coming?
a week?
Does she know it's coming?
No.
He kind of says it.
He says what's happening, she's preparing me, and
And everybody's going, what?
according to what he just read, it's 6 days before Jesus was to be killed.
Okay,
So we're close, we're within a week.
alright.
And I didn't research this, Miss Mary Beth, but if I had to guess, if you go back and study the Passover lamb and what happened to that lamb on that day, there was probably a cleansing process that took place to get him ready for death. Are you following me?
Yes.
In the rituals of the Passover lamb. Again, my Jewish history on this stuff is not the greatest, but if I were to go back and look this up, I guarantee you something happens to that
That lamb
lamb
before
on the
the
same day as it happened to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything else that happened to Jesus coincided with what was taking place at the same time. At the same time Jesus cries out, "It is finished," it's the same time the Passover lamb's dying in the temple. He's dying. At the same time Jesus died. Everything, when Jesus came into the city and they cried, "Hosanna in the highest," and all that, the lamb would have been brought into the city at the same time. Everything Jesus did during that week coincided with what happened to that lamb, because he was the Passover lamb.
Okay.
So if we went back and studied, I guarantee you we would find something happened to that lamb on the same day as Jesus being anointed.
Okay.
Okay? I didn't, because I didn't think about that until right now when it was asked. And I apologize, I just didn't think about that angle. I'll try to do better next time.
You're doing good.
So let's get to chapter 10 of Luke. Okay? Bring it all down now. Let's all bring it all together here. Luke chapter 10. Whose house are we in now? Martha's house. Martha, verse 40. Martha was distracted with all her preparations. She came up to Jesus and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the serving alone? Then tell her to help me." But the Lord answered and said to her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and bothered about so many things, but only one thing is necessary, and Mary has chosen that good part, which shall not be taken away from her." Right?
Mine says Mary has chosen the good portion which will not be taken away from her.
Which is what? Again,
She's chosen that which is most important.
which is what?
Being at the feet of the Lord. And
Is being at the feet of Jesus more important than preaching for Jesus?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Be careful how you answer.
did you say them preaching for Jesus?
What's more important?
I think
Sitting at his feet or
Possi-
working for him?
they're possibly equal.
According to this, sitting at his feet.
Okay, but read me again what you just read me, Miss Mary Beth. She has chosen what?
The good portion.
Portion. Portion. But did not also Jesus say that he that gives a cup of water in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward?
Yes.
Isn't that also a portion? Would we not say that serving people is reward too? Does it not have its own reward? Being a servant? Who's the greatest in the kingdom?
Servant.
Servant. What's Martha doing?
She's
She's a servant.
But,
But we read this story and we go, Martha, Martha, Martha. But let me ask you something. Go look at that person in the mirror and tell me what we deem as more important. Sitting at that table with our Bible open, or going to help somebody in need? What makes you feel better about yourself? And be honest with me here. What makes us feel more like we did something for the kingdom of God today? Is it this?
reading or helping. Well, it's
Now,
helping.
that's not sitting at the feet of Jesus.
Is it not?
No.
Is it not? Jesus is the
You
Word
think?
that became flesh.
Yeah.
What is it we call this?
This is the word.
Word. He is the Word.
That's right.
He's the Word of life. This is alive. It is breathed from the lips of God. However you want to word it. It's breathed from God through the hands of people. The Holy Spirit moved on people, men of God, and they wrote life-giving words. How many times has God spoken to your heart by reading this right here? Is that not sitting at His feet?
But
That's
there's
what
a
she was
difference in
doing.
a ritual and being in His presence. I can sit and read my Bible. and be
Okay,
thankful
so you're
to
going to tell me
Jesus.
every day when you sit there and read, it's all ritualistic?
Heck no.
Well, how do you get at His feet? It starts by going,
You're
That's
right.
the word.
I mean,
You're right.
who enjoys getting up early in the morning besides Lillian? She's the only one in this room that's going to get joy getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go sit at the table and read the Bible together.
I do. I do. I like it.
Because you're a morning person. But all the non-morning people like Lillian, yeah. Now you do it at night, she's good, I'm going to sleep. I'm a morning person. I
am
enjoy. I'm up early. I'm up before anybody else in the house, and I'm doing my thing, worshiping Jesus. I'm doing my thing. I'm a morning person. He is not.
I'm an early morning person.
Yeah, he's still up early in the morning person. I've been asleep. I go. He's going down. I'm coming up, kind of thing. It happens all the time. We laugh about it quite often. Okay, but let's talk about the feet of Jesus. Which is more important?
I had somebody tell me when I was a brand new Christian, and I've found it to be true in my life, but they told me, I don't remember the context of our conversation, even how it came up, but looked at me and said, the hardest thing that you'll ever do for God in your walk with Him is nothing. Meaning to sit down and be still and not be trying to worry about being about doing something.
Yeah, but Jesus said right here that she chose the good part.
Yes, he did. But here's the
The
part.
serving
Okay,
evidently ain't the.
here's the part we miss. Here's me on this. Okay, this is where I'm coming from, right? Let's read it again. Verse 38. As they were traveling along, he entered a village. Who entered the village? Jesus. A woman named Martha welcomed Jesus into her home. She had a sister called Mary who was seated at the Lord's feet. What is she doing? What's he doing?
Listen to this.
What's he doing?
Teaching.
Teaching.
When Jesus is teaching, where do you need to be?
At his feet.
When he's not teaching, where do you need to be? At his feet. Oh, you said it.
I don't know what
We
you want to
miss
say.
the key point of this story. He's teaching. Who has greater words of life than Jesus? No one.
Nobody.
So
Go
So
ahead.
you're
it's not that her serving is wrong, it's
No.
that he's
The timing was
teaching,
wrong.
It's time to listen.
The timing was wrong.
So should have had serving after the teaching.
Her
Listen.
timing was wrong. That's the serving could have waited. And here's why Jesus said, we talked about it last week or sometime, I'm only done the things that I have seen and heard from when he's at the well, in Luke chapter 4, there's a woman at the well, comes to the well, and he says, give me drink. She says, hey, you ain't got nothing to draw with, man. He said, give me something. And he says, if you had known who was here, you would have asked me. She leaves. The disciples come up. And Jesus looks at them and says, I have bread to eat of that you know not of. Right?
Yeah.
What's it from? Jesus is feeding the people. And Martha missed it. It's not that what she was doing was wrong. Yes, it needed doing. People needed serving. He's teaching. There's a time for work, and there's a time to listen. And Mary chose the good portion.
Good point.
Are y'all following me here? There's a time, and there's a time. Did that answer your question? There's a time for work. It has, I mean, the kingdom of God's not going to go forward without work. James, what does he say? You say you have faith, I'll show you I do faith by my works. Faith without works is dead. But on the flip side of that, sitting at the feet of Jesus is as important, if not more important, than the actual going and working. And there's a time for both. You don't just stay at his feet. You get what he's telling you and you go do it. That's why I said last week, when we start hearing and doing what the Father's saying, we'll start seeing stuff get done that we've never seen get done before. But you got to get at his feet and you got to listen to what he's teaching in order to go do what he's teaching. And if you're just busy doing, and that's the problem we have today, is we have so many people that are doing, and it all needs done. And I'm just going to throw out stuff that we know. The food bank, the broken wing stuff, it needs doing. Going and preaching in Africa needs doing. Taking care of widows, it needs doing. Doing all the stuff that it needs doing. But if we don't sit at the feet of Jesus and be imparted from, I didn't say from even here. This is not technically sitting at the feet of Jesus. I guess it could be in some degree. But I'm talking about that personal, by yourself, intimate time with God that you're supposed to have by yourself at home, in your closet. Jesus said when you enter into your closet, your heavenly Father sees things done in secret. The Father sees, and he will reward you openly. But if we don't do anything in secret, how can he ever reward us openly? Because most of what people do today is done openly, and we already get our reward.
Now, the Good Samaritan,
Yes.
when others had passed by, it was supposed to be godly men.
Yes.
And he took it upon himself to give of himself.
Absolutely. And we're supposed to.
You got to give of
I
yourself
agree. 100%.
before it can be accomplished
I
for
agree.
worth from God.
I
So
agree.
he
You have to
gave
give.
of himself to help this man in
Yes.
need.
He did.
Now, if you just pass by and say, I got to go read my Bible. Somebody's in need out there and you just say, I got to go read my Bible.
James says, if you see someone that needs a coat and you don't give them a coat,
Give them
That's right.
It's worthless to tell them be warmed and filled.
Yeah.
And don't give them.
So
That's listening to
you got to
Back to
have
God
both.
now.
You
That
got
is
to do
listening.
both.
That is listening to
you hear
Jesus.
and act.
When you see a need, feel a need type thing, yes, I
That's what
agree.
makes you think, should I give him?
It's all right, yes, but at the end of it all, you've got to have that relationship time,
That's right.
because it comes down to this. There will be many on that day that will say, Lord, Lord, did we not do all these works? Did we not do all? But I never knew you. Mary was at his feet learning him. Martha was working for him. Mary was learning from him. And there's a huge difference. Who came and washed his feet just sometime later? Who came? The sister of Lazarus. Which sister?
Mary.
Was it the one that was working for him or the one that learned him?
Learn
Mary.
So again, my question to you is, how do we go from sitting at his feet, falling in love with him, where he came and raised our brother from the dead, and we're thankful for that, to the point where we're sitting at his feet, to the point where we're pouring out costliness over his feet? Are you understanding me? It's a progression. You're never going to get to the point where you would pour out over his feet if you don't sit at his feet and first you don't fall in love with
That's
him.
it.
You got to learn to fall in love. Because remember, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but yet have not love. If I bestow all my gifts and give all my money to feed the poor, but yet I don't have love. If I give my body to be burned, but yet I don't have love. It starts with loving him. And it goes into spending time with him. And then it goes into pouring out over him. Are you with me?
And when the rich man came to Jesus and he said, "This you like,
Go sell all you
go
possess.
sell all you have
Yes, ma'am.
and give to the poor." So whenever we're in love with Jesus, we're going to do these other things that we have opportunity to do and we can do.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people that are doing but don't know it.
I agree. I agree with that. But also, love is action. We've got to act on it. That
We do.
love.
We do. We've been all over your 80-something years, okay? How many people have you met, and even more so nowadays, that actually read their Bible every day? That actually pray outside of just at a meal or God help me? That sit down and fellowship with God?
What they do in their private time, but you can tell by their actions if they're
Fruit shows,
fruitful.
right?
If they're fruitful.
Our fruit show, and I'm not talking about just giving money, I'm talking
Oh,
about
I
our
know
actions
that.
and doings. We have become a self-centered world. I'm telling us, we've got to go from I love Jesus into spending time with Jesus, and yeah, working for Jesus, absolutely. But to the point where we're broken and spilled out on the feet of Jesus. You understand what I'm saying?
Jesus is talking to Peter, right? That's how he loves him. And it was the three of them.
Right. Do you agape me? Do you phileo me? Do you agape me? It's two different kinds of love, three different times asked. Do you really love me?
We have to go.
Right. We got to grow in our love. Just like in this room, we love one another. But the more that we know in the time spend, you do, that love grows deeper and deeper and deeper.
And I don't care how old you are, that love has still got to be growing. You never grow out of loving.
Yes, ma'am.
You got to continue that.
Yes, ma'am. I asked Mama to. Mama, you can either just do the words, say the words, sing it if you feel comfortable. If you don't feel comfortable singing, that's all right. But I've heard her sing this song my whole life, and she's always done it by tape. And I'd asked her to play it, but I had forgotten, and it was all by tape. But the song, excuse me, was written about the woman that broke and spilled it out upon the feet of Jesus. And I had written her last night and asked her to try to. And again, however you want to do it. If you just want to read the words, that's fine. If you want to try to play it, Mama, go ahead. However you feel comfortable.
I'll just try. One day